Hello, and welcome to Movie of the Year, the only podcast with the science and the screaming to determine what is the single greatest movie of any given year. That given year right now, right this second, is 1984, and we are deep into it. Sort of shallow into it.
We're doing it.
We're sort of just started, but tonight is such a special night because for 1984, and probably only 1984, based on how it's going so far, we are going to have special guests that have never done the show before or rarely done the show before. If this is your first time listening, Movie of the Year is a movie discussion / game show where I, as the host, will invite various panelists to the show to compete for points, for love, for friendship. It's a journey, and I hope to make one friend tonight and one enemy. And that friend will obviously be the winner. I'm not going to be friends with a loser. That voice that you hear right there is not Ace Ventura, but it is, in fact, Greg Ventura, his youngest son.
I am smoking, Ryan. And I want to say I fit in this podcast like a glove.
Where did we get all these Truman shows?
I guess you could say I'm the majestic guest.
Damn it, I was going to say the Prestige. Good thing I didn't. You saved my ass from that. And our first guest in a series that's going to go out to the rest of the 1984 season is the co-host, we'll say co-host, not the star.
No, not the star, for sure.
That's for other people to be. Of the hit podcast, Debut Buddies, it's Nate.
Hey, it's me. I'm so excited to be here. 1984, doing a show with two gentlemen who I would consider my big brother.
Together as one unit.
And
Together as one unit.
Are you going to reveal at the end of this episode if you hated or loved Big Brother?
The show? Uh-huh. Or the character from the book?
Either way.
How deep are we going here? I didn't steer this bit from the start, so.
Yeah, I would say we'll go no more deep than this. Gentlemen, the movie tonight, as I have forgot to mention, and the reason I forgot to mention is because I think a little monster snuck into the podcast and deleted when I mentioned it. The film is 1984's Gremlins, directed by Joe Dante. It became very clear throughout the run of starting the season that this season's going to be nostalgia-rific.
Yes,
based on our age and when we were born, which are linked. Mm-hmm. Let's start with Greg. Are you a Grem head? And what do you think of the movie this time, rewatching it?
As a kid, it was just a little bit too scary for me, but I did see it a bunch. Was a big Gizmo fan, but I ended up seeing a lot more of Gremlins 2, the new batch,
which most people think is a far superior movie,
including director Joe Dante. He's like, everything I wanted to do, we successfully did in Gremlins 2, the new batch. And it's also like that one is less scary. They still left in some of the horror parts for this one, but watching it as an adult, this is Gremlins. I have to say, some of the 1984 movies, it's like we haven't seen since we're kids. Gremlins is one of those where you still occasionally watch it, especially maybe around Christmas time. And I think it's a rich, layered text. I think there's a lot of interesting stuff, a lot of extremely strong choices, a lot of tones, a lot of. It goes in different ways at different times. All the tones.
All the tones.
And I don't know that it always successfully does everything it wants to do, but I think it's going to make a good show.
Nate, have you heard of or seen Gremlins before?
Both, yeah. I was born in 1981, which would have put me at 3 years old when this movie came out, so I didn't see it in the theater.
No.
This was a huge staple. Now, this was the scary one, right? I remember being a kid watching this, and there were many triggering moments in my rewatch for the show. Just remembering how like the grossness, the gore, just some of the jump scares and stuff like that, very creepy. But this is a high quality motion picture. Like, this is really fun. It's really well acted by almost everybody.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
And I was just I really enjoyed it. It's definitely maybe my favorite Christmas movie, or second favorite Christmas movie, behind a movie that's referenced in it because Joe Dante loves hearkening throughout this. Because It's a Wonderful Life, quality movie too.
Sometimes he like will subtly allude to a movie, and you're like, I see what you're doing. Then he's like, but just in case you missed it, It's a Wonderful Life.
I've rented It's a Wonderful Life at the video store, and we should watch it tonight in this film that we're in called Gremlins.
You got to remember, picture-in-picture didn't exist in 1984, so Joe Dante created something.
Yeah, this was a movie I was a little nervous to watch, not because I'm scared of movies like you bitches, but because I did think that it was going to step on my childhood. Not as bad as like a lady Ghostbuster would do, but some amount. And that is going to happen to us in this season. Like, I do think that we're going to be let down by some of the movies in this season based on our memories. But this was fan-fucking-tastic.
Yeah.
It's very hard for me to rate if we were going to give it like a star rating or a grade, because the filmmaking, for most of the movie, it is not interested in making a movie. And as we know them, and a lot of the time, that's such a bad thing for me. Like, if you don't even care about that part, unless you're like Tarkovsky, then it's not going to work. But Joe Dante basically does everything right in putting himself in the position to get to a point in this movie where he just gets to do whatever he wants, and then he does whatever he wants for like an hour.
Yes,
and it fucking rules. It just rules. And the tones are wildly mixed, but like, again, he's essentially Chuck Jones directing a Looney Tune. Chuck Jones is in this movie sitting at a bar at one point. Like, that's the goal that he wanted, and that's the goal that he achieved. And if we're just going by the bar that you set for yourself, this is a fucking 5-star A+ movie.
My number one question is about the Gremlins are the Gremlins cartoons? Because I do feel like the Looney Tune influence is more than just like, hey, this is similar to Looney Tunes. It almost feels like at times like the rules the Gremlins exist under are like cartoon rules.
Like, they have a bag that includes everything, and they can pull whatever they want out of it.
Kind of. That is what it feels like. It's like it happens off screen, but when you cut back to the Gremlins, like, okay, now he's wearing a little Gremlin leather jacket, and he's got like a little Gremlin saxophone. Like, did he take those from a person, or did he like fashion those? Where is he getting
they
that?
Manufacture?
Yeah.
The genius of this movie is that it manages to establish rules that are necessary for a movie like this to have.
Yes.
But the rules are they're trick rules. They're red herring rules, because a rule like don't feed them after midnight sounds cogent, but the moment you go, well, when do you determine when you can start feeding them again? Because after midnight is literally every moment after midnight happens. We don't get that boundary, right? So it's just towing the line of like, we're going to make it seem like this is planned out, and then it can be as goofy as it wants to be, and it all gels.
And what if they outsmart us by unplugging the clock? Man, I gotta say, it's rough to get bamboozled by a gremlin. It's one thing if like 6 of them jump out and cover you and start biting you and stuff, but to just get like completely hoodwinked.
I mean, that's Billy's life. Like, he's a moron.
He doesn't realize it until later the next day when the clock still says that it's like 11:45. Also, Billy, isn't that still pretty close? Do you honestly, don't you want to be like, sorry guys, I can't in the last,
I know, dude.
I got 90 minutes is the cutoff. What if they got something in between their teeth? What if they kept a little chicken bone in the pocket? Like, you got to be careful, Billy. You can't just be like, well, yeah, but whatever.
Those old clocks were not like set by NASA or anything either. So it's like, you could lose a few minutes here and there.
Yes.
I almost sort of think, and this is like reverse pitching or hindsight's 20/20, but it almost sort of feels like, if somebody said at any point, Joe Dante, your movie has no rules. He's like, yes, it does. I put 3 right in there, and people talk about them all the time. Like, they wrote it so that you could break every other rule you wanted to, whether it's physics or storytelling or whatever the rule is. He can do it now because he was like, no, you can't argue that there's rules. Gentlemen, we have to dive into this. Like, we have to get to it. We're going to take the quickest of breaks, and when we come back, can we talk about Gremlins?
Let's do it.
I would love to.
1984's Gremlins is the 6th movie we have covered on this podcast that Steven Spielberg produced but did not direct. And each of those episodes included at least a little conversation about the Spielbergian aspects of the films. In the end, Gremlins might be the greatest synergy between director and producer out of all of them. Defiantly a Joe Dante picture, no one could confuse Gremlins' black humor and misanthropic horror for a Spielberg film. Spielberg may have contributed to this movie in a more important way than any of the others. he suggested to Dante, in full Senior Spielbergo fashion, to not have Gizmo become Stripe, but to separate the characters and have Gizmo stay in Mogwai form for the entire movie. Boom, that's how you make blockbusters. The movie tells the story of a dad just trying to buy his 22-year-old tween, Billy, a Christmas present. So obviously he heads to an underground store full of ancient Chinese artifacts and then steals the one thing he is told he can't have, presumably to take to a British museum. He takes it home to Bedford Falls and tells his son the 3 rules to take care of the Mogwai, named Gizmo. Never introduce it to Corey Feldman. Always have a second clock in your room in case the first one is destroyed. And, of course, keep them out of light because light makes puppets easier to see and therefore harder to make. By the halfway point, Billy is pouring water on Mogwais willy-nilly. The Mogwais are turning into gremlins and water Xeroxing themselves. And the whole town of Bedford Falls rests on the shoulders of Billy Peltzer with the superpower to always stand there, mouth wide open, and do jack shit. The box office blockbusters that try to mix horror and comedy never really hold up. But we're talking about Ghostbusters later in the season. This week, we should talk about Gremlins. Taste buds, I ask you this. Does Gremlins prove that genre benders always end up a little weak at both? Or is it the exception to the rule, a hilarious horror film and or a scary comedy?
I think that by splitting the difference between horror and comedy, it doesn't land fully in either camp. I don't think there are a couple of moments where it's a little creepy and maybe a couple of jump scare moments. And I don't know if there are any moments that are hilariously funny, but the movie is long on fun itself. And that seems to be what it's really going for. And that seems to be the area in between comedy and horror where it's neither quite one, but it does I don't know if it's funny to see the Gremlins. I don't know if it's funny or scary to see the Gremlins drive a bulldozer, but it's fun. It's cool.
Is there a third word we can say that's called just Dante-ish?
Yeah.
He created his own genre? Nate?
Yeah, I think this is the exception to the rule because what it does effectively that both horror and comedy want to do is keep the audience on the edge of an outburst. And that's all this movie does. Now, whether you're getting the outburst that you might want every single time or the same one every single time, I don't think it plays the same way. I think the first time you watch this movie, especially if you're younger, the body horror ooey gooey stuff really lands and it is creepy. There are some moments that are genuinely kind of scary. I think the more you watch it, it becomes more and more comedic, and those things you start to notice, like the death flailing of a gremlin in a fountain, like playing a little bit more like a Looney Tune, and seeing it like, oh, you're like doing a blurble and like one more reach and things like that, where you start to get the references. So it's just really rewarding because it's trying to keep you engaged with all of the canon of sort of filmmaking.
Yeah, I think that rewarding is a really good word because when we say that any movie rewards repeat viewings, we're usually talking about something that is just so complex and there's so many layers to it that you can't really dig through it all. But I think that this movie is different because Joe Dante famously said, and I quote, "I have no idea why that movie was popular."
Yeah.
And I do think it's because of sort of what you're saying, Nate, which is when I was a kid, I didn't laugh at all. Maybe I can't imagine being a kid and being like, oh, God, that is a parody of Flashdance that Gremlin is doing.
Yes, yeah.
And I love Flashdance. But I was scared. I mean, I remember. I didn't get scared this time again. I wasn't scared, guys.
No.
But fucking Stripe's white, pale eyes as he dies in that fountain, that's burned in my memory forever.
Or when he, when he pops out and then he, melts.
Yeah, and it's just his spine there.
Yeah, damn.
I think that's legit scary. But this time around, I was laughing really hard at things that I never laughed at before because, for instance, Stripe saying, water? And then he turns his head and there's a gun in the case and he's like,
yeah.
Gun? That's fucking gold, but it is not set up punchline classic joke. It's just, you're just on this ride with this movie and you're like, all right, get away with anything at this point, movie.
In a very almost similar bit to that, there is a part where they're all playing poker, and there are a couple of very on the nose E.T. references.
Yes, and
one of them is in the poker scene, and it grabs so much of your attention because one of the Gremlins is dressed exactly like E.T. when he dresses up like an old lady, and you're staring at that, and you're like, oh wow, that's such an interesting reference, and that's so fun, and then Stripe suddenly whips out a gun, and it's just like it's so random. And I did end up like laughing at that moment because you just don't expect that to happen.
Did he get permission from his boss to skewer
Yeah.
E.T. as much as he did?
I think we got the big Steven Spielberg presents at the top because he was like, "Look, can I put the ET reference in? I'll give you above title billing on the credits."
One of the really smart choices I think was I heard in the process, like in some early versions of the script, there was going to be a lot more violence towards humans. Like Billy's mom was going to get decapitated, and her head was going to like bounce down some stairs. I think
I still wanted to see Billy's reaction to that, though. I'm just like, I don't get it.
No way, Mom.
I need duct tape.
I think the choice, again, sort of like taken from cartoons, is tremendous violence can be done to the Gremlins,
right?
But try to have them be always the victims of the violence, and the humans, like, saw blades can go near their heads. You know, the truck can almost crush them, but for the most part, on camera, we're not going to see humans taking a lot of damage. And I think that keeps the fun factor exactly where it needs to be. I think that slasher flicks can be fun for some people, but I think it would have attenuated the enjoyment here.
Let's not forget, though, about the one corpse that we see.
The old lady that flies out of her house?
No, she was probably fine.
We do see a Santa absolutely dragged down to the ground.
Yeah, that Santa might be dead. That Santa was like a gazelle with hyenas. Like,
it's funny because it's like clearly the Gremlins, they would prefer to kill you by making some sort of machine do it. But if it comes down to it, they will swarm you they will bite you and they will slice you. Like, if that's what it takes to kill you, they will murder you.
And I mean, that's like, we're going to get to this later, but I think that's an important, there's all these sides about what Joe Dante thinks about Christmas. I think it's important that it's Santa in that scene and not a different person.
Yes.
But no, Billy takes his Mogwai, not Gizmo, but a newer Mogwai, to his, I believe, high school science class.
Oh, yeah.
To his high school science teacher who works until 2:15 in the morning, leaving sandwiches willy-nilly around cages.
This is one of those movies where you're like, hey, cool, they got a black actor to be the teacher. And then you see that suddenly he's in peril, and you're like, wait, no, don't do this. Movie, don't do this. What are you doing? Do not.
And at this point, I don't even know, like, I tried to get Joe Dante on the show, but he's got his own podcast. How established the trope was of black guys always die first.
Yeah.
In 1984. Maybe I sound stupid. Maybe it had been around for a decade before that. So I can't necessarily call this commentary on that because the guy seems smart and then seems very stupid and then gets got immediately by not just getting his hand and then face eaten, but also fucking a syringe right in the butt.
I love the idea where you're like, well, we need the characters to interact with someone knowledgeable that can say like interesting things, expository things about the Gremlins.
Yeah.
And so
it's
they're
a horror
like
movie trope to have that person who can come in and be like, "Oh, this is a vampire.
Yeah,
oh,
exactly.
This is a poltergeist."
It's so great though when it is a high school science teacher and the high school science teacher's like, well, I guess I'll study this a little bit. Yeah, right, dude. As soon as those kids left, I'd be like, I'm getting out of here, man. I'm gonna go home.
Yeah.
I don't want to sit here and poke at this thing.
I remember when I was a high school English teacher, and so often very well-known authors would come in and say, "Please read my manuscript."
Yeah,
like you're a high school English
teacher.
teacher.
Give me notes.
Like, can you just stay until 2 a.m? And I was like, "Absolutely, I
love
will."
being here till 2 a.m. It's my
I
favorite.
have boundless research budget. I'd love to. There's one other thing that's interesting about this movie. Well, there's a lot of other things, but tonally, the Phoebe Cates scene where she talks about her dad dying and how that ruined Christmas for her is part of this tonal balance where, like, the first time you watch it, if you're watching with a straight face, it feels like it's a very serious beat.
Yeah.
And when you watch it later, you recognize this level that Dante is poking fun at these sorts of things, that, like, movies like this have to have a heavy moment.
And pathos and, backstory.
Like yeah, so we're doing something that we don't need just to kind of underscore, like, all this goofy bullshit is happening, and there's actually real serious problems in the world, but you're in a cartoon right now. So don't worry about it.
But, like,
which is kind of cool.
But also establish Dante's tone of horror, comedy, absurd, it's all wrapped up in this story. I got to be honest. It has become the most iconic scene of the movie, right?
Yeah.
Over the last 30 years or whatever. He fought to keep it in because he thought it was sort of just like this microcosm of the entire movie. That part I get. But I think that he probably fought too hard. It stands out so much that you should probably do that with your filmmaking and not just a big speech in the middle. I love how iconic it is, and sitting there listening to it is still baffling.
Yeah.
Like, it's worth it for its absolute craziness, but I get where the producers were coming from, too, in this one.
But see, it's a strong choice. It's clearly meant to be very bonkers. It also doesn't add up at all. Like, how is this guy coming down his chimney with his arms full of packages, and then he somehow gets stuck in it? None of it makes any sense.
Breaks his neck and gets stuck at the same time.
Yeah, exactly.
Dies instantly.
I mean,
there's so many pieces here.
I was talking about with my wife, like, how many days do you wait if you're the Darwin Awards to approach the family about their father? Because, like, you're stupid.
And then in this is a movie like for kids, right? I mean, the movie is created for kids, created to sell toys to kids, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But can you really have the singer to that story be, and that's how I learned there was no Santa Claus? Like, that is how so many kids learned that there's no Santa Claus. Like, and then to traumatize it that way.
Ebert has it in his review to
watch out for
probably
that.
shouldn't take kids, especially those who still believe in Santa Claus.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a public service.
The other thing I want to bring up about the horror is that, and I know this is damning with faint praise, but we've got a couple of horror movies in the season. I've seen a ton of horror movies in the 80s. They're not scary also.
Yeah.
You know, and they're called horror movies. Like, that's their genre. So, like, I think relative to other horror movies of its time, it is roughly as scary. It has roughly as many scary set pieces or moments or edge of your seat parts. And then also brings in a ton of comedy and a ton of subtext. And so that's what elevates it way above something like Chopping Mall, which is a few scary quote-unquote scenes and then nothing else.
Yeah. The one thing about this movie is, like, if you watch it with somebody, you will be engaged in hours-long conversations about Gremlins. Like, there are so many of these movies. I feel like, especially from this year, there's going to be, like, we're going to have to work a little bit to be like, okay, what are we going to talk about? Karate Kid, let's go. But there is, like, every snippet of Gremlins, you want to stop and be like, you know what was weird about that? And then the more you talk about what was weird about it, the more it's like, well, it feels like that's the point the movie is making.
Yeah, and I mean,
the movie's, like, distinctly going after Reaganomics, going after, like, international Orientalist fear,
yes,
all kinds of things, all at the same time, like, very overtly. And Dante's a pretty, like, leftist activist director, generally speaking, so it tracks. I mean, he has the only two police officers in the movie are hapless cowards who are completely ineffectual and just gawk at people while they are murdered or assaulted.
Including,
it is nice
did you recognize the deputy?
Yeah, we got that. This is like I think that
Ehrmantraut.
canonically this is Mike Ehrmantraut's origin story. We don't see it, but his kid gets eaten by one of the Gremlins, and that's why he's always so upset.
Oh, Gremlins, you stay away from my daughter.
Stay away from my daughter.
Okay, let's take a break. I do like before we take a break. Let me say one more thing.
Gremlins.
All right, are we ready to take a break? I do think that what we're describing is this Dante thing that keeps it from being a perfect. Let me choose my words here. Cinematic classic, like a capital F film, because it's too just scattershot. You know, like Nate just barely started to list the plethora of things he tackles in this movie because he does whatever he set his own rules and just does it. That sloppiness keeps it from being perfect. But, and this is sort of like a little snobbish, but what it does do, though, is to me elevates it far above any movie of its ilk at the time. You know,
I
as
think
far
it
as
makes it
genre movies go.
interesting.
I think the one thesis that you can kind of draw that he's pretty successful in stating in this is it's about the destruction of small town America by external forces.
Yeah.
And then he throws every external force in the book at it,
and
including, you know, geopolitical whatever.
Dude, and I don't even know if I agree with that thesis. Like, I'm ready to battle you on that in the next segment.
Yeah.
Sure.
One last thing about horror I have to say. This might be like a little bit too much, Bill, but did the mom at all remind you of the mom from the original Friday the 13th movie? I felt like she was maybe kind of a reference to Jason Voorhees' mom.
Huh.
I felt like the way she was dressed and styled. It's been a really long time since I've seen that movie, but there's all just the way like she grabs the knife too, and that's like her weapon in that. And she's like one of the most badass figures.
I mean, that should be the most iconic scene in the movie, not the Phoebe Cates' Christmas Story. But yeah, I mean, like they develop her in such a way where like it's not just the home is her castle, but the kitchen is everything to her. They show her before that scene being a whiz with a knife. Like she is chopping up onions for days, not paying attention, watching It's a Wonderful Life, and just doing her thing. She's on the verge of being a comically underdeveloped character because she literally doesn't leave that kitchen until that scene where she's like, I will protect my house.
Time to slice.
All right, we got to take a break. We got to stop talking about Gremlins. When we come back, Mount Rushmore?
Mount Rushmore!
That's right. It is Mount Rushmore, the time of the show where we take 4 presidents' heads off as if they were Billy's mom in an earlier version of the script, roll them towards Billy, and say, let's replace them with maybe not heads, but things. Because this week, we are doing the fashion of 1984. Gentlemen, we were all hitting the clubs in 84. We were in New York. We were at Studio 54, if that was still open. Do you guys remember dressing up at this time?
Oh, man. I was Oshkosh Bagosh for days, man. I loved that stuff. I had some Transformer sneakers, Optimus Prime on the tongue. I
got
was
those moon boots.
A fashionista.
Boots?
Do you know what I was wearing? Whatever my brother was wearing, because my mom sucks.
Yeah, she's dressed you exactly the same.
Dressed us the same for 18, 19 years. It was awful. All right, so what we're going to do is we are going to try to determine what are the 4 most iconic heads of fashion, and again, not heads, things, in a very, I'm going to say, stylized year.
Yeah.
I'm not going to comment on the quality of the style, but it was very much its own.
People were looking to styles, and they were like, we're going to have strong takes on style.
Making choices, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that what filmmaking and fashion is all about?
Exactly.
Nate, you're the guest, so I'm going to start with you. What absolutely has to be on this mountain?
I think it's the most ubiquitous article of clothing throughout the movie, which is just a damn good sweater.
A sweater.
Big, little?
Everybody in this movie has a boxy sweater. It's got some sort of like ribbed or knit pattern on it.
Cabling, maybe.
Sweaters are everywhere. Everybody's doing sweaters.
You know what was so big at the time? You'd wear a sweater, but it would be like maybe not sweater weather, so you take that sweater off and tie it jauntily over your shoulders.
You could play tennis that way.
Yeah.
It was a whole thing.
That probably means you're the villain of the movie, but still, you
it
look
probably means
good.
you're played by James Spader, honestly.
Yes.
I was gonna reference the Cosby aspect of the sweater because that is an element here that they are often Cosby sweaters, but we kind of need to dead name that, don't we?
Yeah,
it's got to be something else.
Huxtable.
So
Macklemore sweaters.
There we go.
Okay, and Nate, you know that these trends don't have to come from Gremlins, right? It's the entire year of 1984.
Great. Well, I'm blowing the load there. I'll think about it for the next one.
I'm gonna say Gremlins as a fashion.
Why does Nate look like he's furiously Googling right now?
Gremlin wear.
But no, that's still good. There were sweaters, and it was cold in 1984 because that was before.
Man, that was. You could tell it was really chilly in that movie.
Greg, what do we got?
This is something that I have noticed in the movies of 1984, but I don't think ever existed in the real world. But they were in the movies of 84 and then also the comic books of 84. And it is like a woman will be wearing like a bright yellow tank top, and then she'll have a yellow headband. This is exactly from Repo Man. Early on, there's like a guy coming to get his car, and they're giving him a hard time. And this is just when Emilio Estevez first shows up. And this guy and his girlfriend are like John with the people. And the girl has this yellow top and then this yellow headband. And then the tail of the headband goes like all the way down. It's kind of off to the side. And then it goes like all the way down almost to the ground. There's no way anyone ever wore these in real life because they're like literally dangerous. But you see it in comic books and movies of the time. Like these really like bright headbands with the super long tail.
Do you know what's weird is... like, if we did Rushmore for 2024 about fashion, obviously they would go to us because we're at the height of it, the top of it. It's just like, what do they call it? Athleisure wear? right? Everyone just always dresses like they had just or are about
Oh yeah,
to
they
work
were.
out.
These people were all doing
yeah.
aerobics. They were going. They were either coming from
This
or
was very
going to
active
aerobics.
times.
Yeah, and I think that like that's the athleisure wear of today is not the same as '84, but the idea
Yeah.
is there. You know.
But I think we should talk about individual aspects of athleisure wear because there was so much of it
Yes,
that
that
I
is
think
true.
we have to have individual pieces because
we probably can't just throw athleisure
Yeah.
wear on the mountain.
because that is like there are whole characters for movies that they only wear athleisure wear.
All right, Nate, what do you got?
This is we established both athleisure wear and the fact that it was cold in 1984. And in fact, it was so cold that people's legs needed warming.
Yes.
And leg warmers both appear in the movie Gremlins on a
Yes.
gremlin who is breakdancing and throughout the entirety of the 1980s.
I mean, like, look, I get it, and like, it had that little strap for the bottom of your foot.
Yeah.
You know, so
Yeah.
they never
That way they don't just shoot up.
they can still fall down, but they won't
They'll
shoot
go up. Yeah.
That's so
They're going
important.
to stay down there.
Well,
That's not how gravity works, but that's okay. your big fears they're going to fly upwards. That's fine.
I mean, in a Marilyn Monroe standing on the subway,
But if you
great
think-
situation.
Yeah, and if you're doing the flash dance feet,
Uh-huh.
they might kind of work their way up.
Is there like a croc situation where you can do at the bottom or behind,
Oh, that'd be
like
cool.
active and
Yeah, the sport or comfort wear.
sport or comfort?
Maybe get some gibbets on there.
That is such a good one. I'm gonna ask for one more before I start putting things on the mountain, Greg.
Okay, so this is for boys only here. But one long dangly earring. Emilio Estevez had it in Repo Man. Prince had it in Purple Rain. Make sure it's the correct ear because you want to have the manly ear and not the sexually suspect ear. But it could really make you into an instant heartthrob.
Because there's one ear that if you put it in there, that means that you want people to fuck your ear.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
you got to watch out for those
Watch
people.
out for that,
Yeah.
especially in like New York City. Does the combo work of long ass headband, long ass earring?
Yeah, but they have to be opposite sides. But I think that's kind of like there's kind of like an asymmetry that I think
Yeah,
works,
that's an
you know?
ergonomics thing because you're going to get
Yeah.
a neck injury if you have
Yeah.
them both on one side.
Just don't like drive around in a convertible or like be careful if you're taking an elevator.
God, you know what's fucking 80s as shit? Convertibles.
Convertibles,
Yeah.
dude. Yeah. They're like, man, what if these cars stop being watertight? Like, that's awesome. I love it.
Convertible cars and water beds.
Yeah,
All the
dude,
rage.
we got to get more liquid into our dry spaces.
All right, let's. I mean, like these are four great choices, but on the mountain for sure is not just leg warmers, but that is the Ryan special pick of the week.
Oh, leg warmers.
Nick gets 3 points for that one, and that's basically an unconquerable lead.
It's rare that somebody actually gets the bonus. That's pretty good. Leg warmers briefly became popular again, like late aughts, early 2010s. Leg warmers, very briefly, and it was like, yes, here we go. It's cool again, and then they're gone already.
That sucks, man. They
Gone
look
already.
comfy as shit.
I mentioned a time like 15 years ago. They're like, it's gone already. Yeah,
well,
bro.
time goes slower as we age.
You're talking about a really long time ago.
No, I mean, if somebody says he died in 2008, I'll be like, he died 2 weeks
Oh,
ago.
he died recently, huh?
2000s. Shut the fuck up. The 2000s. Nate, you're up now too.
So here's the thing. It's the 80s. You want to look serious. You want to fit in with your yuppie friends.
Yes.
You need to dress up any outfit at any time. So you need yourself a big blazer with shoulder pads and sleeves that you can roll up to the elbows.
Yeah, but that structured shoulder, you should look like a fucking linebacker, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The smaller the woman, the wider the shoulders was the aesthetic.
And was the whole thing like, Dorothy, come into my office. I have no choice but to give you a promotion because you just look so fucking
Yeah.
buff and awesome.
Dude, honestly, I was going to sexually harass you, but then you came in here and you fucking look like you were strapped for war, and I'm just not going to mess with those shoulders. You look like a fucking wizard or something with those shoulders, man. You've got a mantle on. I love it.
Oh, man, I don't want to show favoritism here. It's just that the blazer is such an important part because, like, you could be wearing rags
Yeah.
or a barrel. Like, you could be naked and strap on
Yeah.
a barrel, like the poorest of the poor. You throw a blazer on that shit, you're good to go to dinner.
You throw on a blazer and you're telling the world, I think poor people should have to live like animals in cages.
Right.
I think insane people should just be pushed out onto the street. That's what a blazer says to everybody.
And then you open up a briefcase that is full of Coke and you do it all.
Yeah, and you just push your face into it.
Yes.
So there's a face imprint like those metal pin
Yeah.
things. You guys know what I'm talking about.
It's like you're trying to open a high-tech bank vault. Face scan only. Tony Montana.
Greg, can we get on the board, please? Here we go.
I don't know, Ryan. Okay. I do have to say I've had some pretty good ones, Ryan. I haven't been the one to say them. Okay. This is the only time I can remember this was like a very widely socially acceptable thing. Women have always been able to wear a shirt that doesn't go all the way down past their belly button. Mm-hmm. But only in the early 80s could a boy wear a belly shirt. I don't know if it's because male bodies have gone so poorly since that time that there's too much belly. But back then, a guy would just be wearing a shirt, and it would like maybe it would say on it, baby doll. Maybe it would say
slut.
Daddy's girl. Yeah.
Everybody was breaking so much. You needed that mobility. You can't pop and lock if your shirt's tucked in. You're gonna get your arms stuck.
Yes.
If I wore one of those fucking belly shirts in public,
yeah,
people would say I would literally hear this quoted: "Is the circus in town right now?" Another good one, Greg, but unfortunately, I'm gonna have to give it to whoever said headband. That is 80s as shit. And in your head, it's not even like strategic, like a sweatband that's going to take your sweat. It's just like cloth, throw it up there.
No, it's really like it's usually balanced against the shirt. Like it's usually it would be like you have a kind of like vest or overshirt, and it's the same color as the headband. And comic book artists love it because they only have like X amount of colors they can work with at the time, and so it's helpful to make it look like there's more color going on than there really is.
And they only have
so much. Makes it easy to find your character in the video game adaptation.
Hell yeah,
with low pixel.
Because that's Dazzler, right? We're just talking about Dazzler.
We're all talking about Dazzler. We're all thinking that.
We're always only talking about Dazzler. All right, it is now time for speed round. So Nate, what do you got?
Okay, we got to talk about a specific, very exclusive club that made windbreakers. Members only. It doesn't have to be the members only jacket itself, but any windbreaker, the brighter the better, the billowier the better, windbreakers.
I mean, what's more early 80s, though, than you're calling your company and then wearing that on your jacket? Members only? Are you shitting me? Just say, like, only whites. That's what you should be saying. Greg, what do you
got? We have established that 1984 is very cold, so much snow around. So I'm also going to go with a jacket. This is the only time I can remember where jackets were super shiny. Like, you'd have, like, a super shiny red jacket, or, like, even a black jacket wouldn't have, like, a matte finish. It would have, like, a high gloss finish. So, super shiny jackets.
All right, Nate, you got anything else?
How about a nice, like, tight mini skirt, like a pencil mini skirt? That was definitely an 80s thing.
And it says Daddy's Girl or...
Juicy.
All right, Greg, last one.
Mesh shirt, especially for boys. Mm-hmm. Boys just wearing like a kind of like net shirt or like I don't know, like fish net shirt.
Because like it's in the family of waterbeds and convertibles. We're just trying to get moisture into places that should be dry.
Let's just get wetter. Also, I love it as a response to the no shirt, no shoes, no service. Like, I'm wearing a shirt.
Yeah, technically
you have
it
to
is
serve
a shirt.
Me. All wonderful, but if I'm really getting my 84 on, I think that I have to throw on this belly shirt. But I would like to, before we put it on the mountain, cut the sleeves off.
Oh, yeah. Man,
sure. Yeah.
This time, people didn't want to see sleeves. Were the torsos and arms particularly good at this time?
I mean, in the pictures that I see, but they don't keep pictures of people like me on the internet.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah.
Those belong in a circus. All right, your Rushmore for 1984 fashion is, and I highly advise you guys to wear all of these at the same time: leg warmers, a blazer, a headband, and a belly shirt. All of those can work in the same outfit.
Together, yeah.
I'm pretty sure we can Google image search that and find five movies where the lead character wears that.
If you see someone wearing that, the apocalypse has happened, and they are like already wearing whatever clothes they can find.
Is it cool to leave Mount Rushmore the same and then walk down the street to the Crazy Horse and throw all of those clothes on the Crazy Horse statue? That's gonna get done soon, right, guys?
Yes.
The one. How long have they been working on that thing?
Like 80 years or something. Yeah. All right, that's 1984 fashion for you. When we come back, more Gremlins. And we're back to Gremlins. For the sake of argument, let's just say that this is a Christmas movie and avoid the godforsaken pitfalls of any conversation about Die Hard. The whole setting of this movie is a direct parody of the most famous Christmas movie of all time, Die Hard 2. Taste buds, I ask you this. What is Joe Dante's take on Christmas? Fun for the whole family or something a little darker?
I think it's a lot like the Gremlins themselves, Ryan. That if we could just manage our expectations, if we could just manage our worst impulses.
Show a little responsibility.
Yeah, just show a little responsibility and just a little self-control. Christmas could be a nice, cute little thing. But we've let it become this huge monster that takes over everything and literally kills the center of the entire holiday in a vicious attack. And so I think it's
well, two. If the guy coming out of his house and Phoebe Cates' dad.
That's true. Although Gremlins didn't get that guy. I'm just gonna say it. It feels like that guy might have taken his own life.
Yeah.
In just the most horrific way for his family possible. But yeah, so I think that if we could manage, because to underline this, anytime they're not doing a good job paying attention to the rules, it's because they're so caught up in all the stuff that's around them, and they're not even really seeing the joy of the Mogwai because of all this stuff. They're kind of over Gizmo before they even see him.
Well, yeah, because it's time to move on. It's time to pay attention to other things.
Yeah.
And it's because Christmas, this movie, I think, proves that Christmas turns adults into children.
Yes.
Like Disneyland does.
There is this underlying urge for more, right? The crux of the movie going wrong is that they can't stop just pouring water on the fucking things to make more of them. Even
my God. Just don't even bring water upstairs.
Yeah. Stop having that. Stop doing it. Stop gleefully staring at it and thinking what could go wrong with this? There's this incredible hubris attached to it. And I think the other thing that we haven't mentioned yet is there's also this undercurrent of we've completely broken from being able to sort of connect with each other in a loving, compassionate Christmas season sort of way, right?
Yeah.
Outside of carolers existing in one scene where they kind of stop and take it in, and it's the cute scene where Billy and Phoebe Cates are kind of going on their It's a Wonderful Life walk.
Right. Yeah.
He doesn't lasso the moon for her and says something racist to her instead. But we don't have a lot of moments where people are actually caring about each other, right? Mrs. Deagle is immediately oh no, this is the greedy lady that runs most of town. And everybody is just sort of self-absorbed otherwise, including Corey Feldman, who can't be bothered with anything.
What the fuck was that? He spends a solid... Corey Feldman plays Billy's 12-year-old totally normal friend. That's just a perfect relationship. Yeah. And Corey Feldman accidentally spills some water on this fucking alien thing that he has never seen before. That thing starts popping out other things, and about 10 seconds later, he's like, whatever. What's this?
I'm looking at this
book?
3D comic book. It's got 3D.
What the fuck, man?
Glasses.
If that was an animal that I had seen a million times before, I would have paid more attention to that animal than he does.
Even thinking, this is why it seems like it does make sense to leave in Phoebe Cates' story, because even what he's trying to do there, her dad, is so over the top. He's not trying to just, as you said, Nate, emotionally connect with his family around the holidays. He is on his roof, dressed in a Santa costume, which is something absurd that Fetterman is later watching, Funderburk, whatever his name is watching on TV. That guy,
red buttons,
sliding all. And then with his arms so full of presents, and then trying to go down the chimney, and it's just that is a Gremlins-like moment, and it's because it's so divorced from any sort of reality about how you're supposed to get close to the people around you, because we've kind of lost that in the 80s, and we've replaced it with this crass. And think about it, what is the reaction almost every single person has the first time they see Gizmo? They say, where can I get one?
Right.
Where can I buy this? Or the dad says, we should sell these. Everyone's reaction to it is a product.
A pet is the single worst thing you can ever get anybody for any gift. Don't ever do that.
The I'll give you $100 for it. How wide the kid's eyes go at that amount of money.
Yeah.
And how clearly money drives everything in this universe. That's from beat one. So we're thinking about everything about this that way. And then, you know, when he presents the gift to Billy, his first instinct is to shake it so much that it is
hard.
concerning. He's like, oh, it's a puppy? I'm going to kill this animal before I open the box. He's shaking it. Like,
hey, Billy, there's 3 rules that the Chinese man told me, but there's also other rules to this. Like, don't shake it and kill it immediately. Thought that could just be left unsaid.
So that means I can bash its head against something, right? No, Billy, you can't.
Oh, my God, Billy. Oh, Billy. Let's get to, you know, what's wrong with our Christmas, what Joe Dante is definitely hinting at here. This follows in the footsteps of the original Dawn of the Dead, where it Dawn of the Dead very purposefully takes place almost entirely in a mall. This has its third act in a mall. Not the only type of commercialism or consumerism in the mall, but this is definitely on his mind, attaching it to Christmas. Right? Did all of Dante's stuff go over the top, or did that all land with you guys?
I thought it was interesting, less the mall even, and more they all go to the movie theater, and they all watch Snow White and the 7 Dwarves, and I just thought that was like, he had been tiptoeing around, like, you know, this is a movie about movies. As much as it's a movie about Christmas, it's specifically a movie about Christmas movies. The old lady is directly out of Wizard of Oz, which has sort of like become a Christmas movie. It's got like side doored into being a Christmas movie. There's all the It's a Wonderful Life. So and then in the very end, they actually go into a movie theater, and so it feels like it's so much about like entertainment and movies themselves. And I think in a way it's an odd vehicle to do this, but I think Dante is sort of pointing the picture at Hollywood and saying, like, we are also becoming ridiculous in the same way. But it's so weird to use Gremlins as the way to say that, because it's literally toys running around, like, and so to use your heavily licensed product as a way to be like, I think we've gotten too far into commercialism as a movie venture seems a little absurd in a way.
I think where it gets tricky is Dante's trying to turn the mirror to all of 80s society at the same time as he's trying to make kind of a consumeristic excess commentary. Because when we get that montage where they're all playing poker and they're hanging out and they've all suddenly taken on very sort of pastiche American characters. They're all playing actors or references, or
they all
just
suddenly
like
have costumes
stereotypes.
on.
But yeah, they all become 80s people, and they're all just living huge, right? They're living like literally nothing could go wrong ever, and they're mirroring what
stogies.
And what they're doing, basically, once Stripe jumps in that pool, and then we just have 45 minutes of Dante mayhem, Dante's Inferno. What they're doing is it's just a bunch of skits that are it's almost like the Gremlins have spent 2 decades consuming all pop culture possible, because that's his audience has done that. And Dante is not incapable, but like Dante will take every opportunity he can across his entire career to fill it with in-jokes and, movie knowledge, and like sort of proving his bona fides about how much pop culture he's consumed. And then on top of that, Spielberg's whole thing about like, don't have Gizmo turn to Stripe, keep Gizmo the same. That turns Gizmo into the Urkel of its time, and now he's selling 1 billion toys every Christmas, for 3, 4, 5 years.
Also, that gives Gizmo the opportunity to do so many like, oh, sorry about my family faces.
Eye rolls.
And you want to talk about fucking Christmas movie? Like being like to people like, I'm sorry my family's like this. I'm the only one that's normal. I don't know why they're all so weird, and I'm a normal person.
Speaking of Gizmo's eye rolls, I do listen to Joe Dante's podcast, The Movies That Made Me, and he doesn't talk a lot, and he's got 6 stories that I have heard thousands of times. Some podcasters are like that, not us, but others. But he always gives, when filmmakers are on, he always gives this advice of make sure that there's a pet, because that gives you coverage, and you can film that pet. And I thought that he was making fun, or like sort of making fun of like cheesy filmmakers. Barney the dog in this movie is just constantly like, it cuts to him, he puts his paw over his eyes,
dude,
he rolls his eyes, he shakes his head.
And this dog is having very real reactions to the puppets. Like when he sees Gizmo, he's like, I want to start jumping all over that. And when the one melts right in front of him, he's not okay with it. He's like, what the fuck is this?
That is method acting right there.
Yeah, dude, we got to get out of here.
Not to mention he has Mrs. Deagle to deal with, who is constantly talking about how she's going to turn him into all sorts of awful things.
Yeah, this is like this comes from a different era in Hollywood where someone's character trait could be, I'm going to kill your dog. Like, we don't have that, I feel like, in movies nowadays anymore. The character that's just like, that dog
John
of yours.
Wick series is based entirely off of that.
It's the opposite, though, right?
Well, yeah.
You don't kill the dog.
Yeah, I mean, they string that dog up in those Christmas lights. And
they do.
That is a hard scene to watch as a dog owner who, like, that can't be comfortable for that dog. Like, I don't care how you rig them up, he does not look happy.
And isn't their first thought, like, how did Mrs. Deagle get in here?
Yeah. Like, meanwhile, like, one thing I didn't know about the movie until I started thinking about it on the Hill in preparation for this show is it's always seemed a little weird to me that, like, for instance, Gizmo straight up talks. Like, he says things and nobody reacts to it. I found out for the first time on this viewing that the very last thing they did was have the disgusting Howie Mandel come in and do the voice for Gizmo. And so no actors are aware that Gizmo is literally talking. And that's why they don't react to anything Gizmo says or does, because they have no idea what he's saying or doing. And
just like the Look Who's Talking series.
That gives the quality of the movie really, like, a really weird feeling, because they're like, look at my Gizmo, and the Gizmo's like, hi, how are you? And they're just like, whatever, I don't care. Like, it just spoke English, man. What are you doing? But they don't know that.
Let's be honest, though. That we watched all of the other actors besides the lead not reacting. All we have of the lead actor is not reacting. So
yeah,
Gizmo talking on set would not have changed anything. Before we go, can we get into this? Would Gremlins have been closer to an all-time masterpiece? Like, we're talking pretty fondly about it, but like closer to an all-timer if like a young Matthew Broderick or Jason Bateman or Michael J. Fox,
dude,
like, somebody who can bring anything to the, like, literally anything to this role, would it have like taken it over the top?
Oh yeah, I think if you just made Phoebe Cates the lead and moved Zach Galligan to the side, it would have worked.
Like Offset?
Yeah, keep going,
like
Zach.
Literally just
little more, Zach.
Keep going.
See that door that says
your lights over there. Keep going. Yeah. Literally any other actor would have been better. He's so the just dried driftwood of the movie compared to everyone else, and everybody else knows what movie they're in, I think.
Yeah,
and he does not know that he's in a movie.
Yeah, he just wandered on. I think, what do we have? 2 scenes with Corey Feldman, who is not legendarily one of our greatest actors, but like, I can nail down his persona, that kid's personality, based on those 2 scenes. And Zach Galligan is a
it
blank
seems
slate.
to be like, hey, Gremlins. That's like the extent of his reaction.
Oh, I hope the remake is named that. All right, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we are going to have a little bit of a guest. His name is Descripto, and he's magnificent.
Descripto the Magnificent!
Descripto the Magnificent is, of course, a online film critic who comments all over the internet. Tonight, we are going to Letterboxd for his reviews. These, I don't have he uses many different names. I don't have the credit for the people who wrote these, but thank you, Letterboxd. I'll just thank the corporation instead of like the people. Yeah, that's probably better.
For hosting
Thanks,
all of
company.
this wonderful original work.
I mean, that's America, right? Isn't that what Joe Dante's point was?
Listen, we had an AI go in here and write these. The AI's named Descripto.
Descripto has reviewed movies from 1984, and so I am going to read some of those now. When I'm done talking, and you can tell I'm done talking because I will give Descripto's star review, buzz in with your name, and then you get a chance at answering. Number 1. It's like H2O just to add water, but with even more plot holes. It did kind of make me want to crimp my hair, though. 1 star. Greg?
Footloose.
Not Footloose. Nate? All alone here.
Ooh. Flashdance.
It is not Flashdance. It is Splash.
The crimping
sure.
the hair. That was a big one.
And the Just Add Water.
And
Yeah,
almost
just
all of the
water.
clues were obvious here. Number 2, stupid ass movie. This entire time they could have given the princess a new name without all this bullshit adventure. 1 star.
Greg,
Yes,
the never-ending story.
that is correct.
Well done.
Number 3, this movie's very progressive for its time. It's probably one of the first films to feature a flamboyant, androgynous rock star that beats and harasses women until they fall in love with him. 1 star.
Ooh, Nate.
Purple Rain,
Purple
Rain.
There's that other part of Purple Rain that reviewer highlighted. Are we doing Purple Rain?
No,
No.
got booted.
I'm glad.
Internally screaming the entire time, not because it was good, but because of the indoctrination for the stupidest reasons. Newsflash, Jesus doesn't give a shit if you fucking dance or not. 1 star.
Nate. Footloose.
And Fancy Free. Nate gets the point. Number 5, this movie really hits you with the old 1-2 combo. Unfunny racist jokes and unfunny rape jokes. It's baffling to me the absolute lack of charm this movie has. 1 star. Greg.
Revenge of the Nerds.
Good guess, but no.
No, okay. I'm like, what's a rapey franchise?
Nate, you got anything?
I don't.
Okay.
I do not.
The unfunny racist jokes are Getty Watanabe as a extremely
okay.
Japanese
Okay,
roommate
yeah.
or like what do you call it?
Exchange student.
Exchange student, thank you. And then the unfunny rape jokes, it's 16 Candles.
16 Candles.
Number 6, the baby is horrifying in this one. Also, it misses the entire point of the novel. 1 star. The baby is horrifying in this one.
Greg. The Omen 2?
No, it is not the first Omen sequel, the second Omen. Nate, you got anything?
Eraserhead?
2?
It is Dune.
Oh! The baby. Oh, yeah.
Sure.
Number 7, she's literally just trans and autistic, and everyone hates her for it. 1 star.
Nate. Sleepaway Camp?
It is Sleepaway Camp.
Wow, way to go, Nate. Were those
Classic film.
Were those great clues? That was
Yeah, there's
okay.
There's a big reveal at the end.
Very valuable clues. Yeah.
It has a bit of a crying game like ending.
I see.
Number 8, just stand a bit back from the podium. 1 star.
Greg. Is it Police Academy?
Police
Hell
Academy.
yeah, Police Academy. The world famous blowjob scene. Why would you say no? This podium's got it all.
We were supposed to do an unfortunate blowjob duo of Ghostbusters and Police Academy, but we're only doing Ghostbusters this season. Number 9, is amnesiacs or people with no past becoming ad men a trope? Was this common? Why do people with no past become ad men? Why was this movie ever produced? 1 star. I think they're referring to Mad Men.
Yeah, that man. If
Yeah.
it weren't the movie, but instead the show
The
that's
show
being
Mad Men.
alluded to, I'd be right there. But I do not know.
Yeah, I'm
This is probably
not sure.
This is probably the most egregious leave out from our Sweet 16. Kermit gets hit by a car and hit on the head, and then goes from Broadway producer to ad man in Muppets Take Manhattan.
Yeah, I was really looking forward to this, but the matchups were all bad for
Yeah,
it.
it sucked. All right, this is your last chance, gentlemen. Number 10. Been to Paris, Texas before. Movie is not accurate to when I was there. 1 star.
Greg,
Paris,
Texas.
That is Paris, Texas. And thank you so much to Scripto for all of your work. And, of course, the people who actually wrote those things. When we come back, more about Gremlins. The chat rooms and forums are riddled with analysis about how Gremlins is essentially one long racist screed, mostly focused on Asian people and black people, all laid out by Billy's neighbor Futterman, who basically mutters the word foreigners for the entire movie. Did mainstream media make children of the 80s fall for a conservative movie? Or are these theories unfounded?
They're so unfounded.
Yeah.
Futterman is so obviously a clown. We're supposed to laugh at him the whole time. I mean, he's comically drunk. In the one scene where he's trying to drive his tractor home and passes out midway through.
You know how you can tell they're making fun of patriotism? Because it's not even Funderman or whatever his name is. It's the two cops. When the two cops first see Gizmo grabs a little American flag.
Yeah.
And the sheriff, the lead guy, is like, patriotic little guy, isn't he? Like,
Yeah.
Because all you have to do is grab the flag.
I mean, it's very Trump-like because that's what I was thinking about, is that, like, if you're a Trump voter, you see Futterman as a hero. He's the hero of the movie. But there's two types of people in the world. You either watch Trump dry hump a flag,
which
and
he's
be like,
done several times.
That's my man. Or you're like, this seems ridiculous, and he might be insane.
I'll tell you another way in which this movie has its finger on the pulse, I think, of, like, the working man's thoughts at the time, but also right now. The part where Phoebe Cates says a lot of guys like that, talking about Funderburk or Funderman or whatever, they just want to know that somebody hears them.
Oh, yeah.
That is fucking what political scientists say about so much of the electorate right now, that the problem is these people feel forgotten and they just need somebody to acknowledge them in some way or another. And whether or not that's like a bullshit take or whatever, I'm not saying, but it's just that philosophy.
I mean, there's that stat that says that if you are a, like, let's say 15 to 17-year-old white male, that you are the odds are very great that you will become alt-right unless you have somebody that steps in and keeps you from doing that. Like, that is your direction unless you have somebody. And then you have, 55 to 85-year-old dudes on social media as well, and they're basically the same, of like, whoever will listen, I will speak to, and then they just amp each other up. And that Futterman is just without anyone. Like, he's got this very sweet wife who I guess puts up with him, but like, he is the one pre-social media who's essentially like the town drunk, the town crazy,
I had a theory that Ben Shapiro's wife might actually be a Mogwai, and that's why he was so disturbed at the idea that she would ever get wet.
Yeah. Can't really handle multiple wives. That makes sense. I think Futterman is playing the guy who he never says anything to anybody's face either. Like, he's only capable of sort of muttering things and casting these aspersions aside. He's not really.
See, this is the problem. He mutters and nobody hears.
He's a mutter
man. And now we're at the point where that muttering has gotten like louder and louder and louder.
Everybody got their platform and their megaphone.
Yeah, and now it's like, okay, well, now you're going to have to hear.
And there's so many reasons. Like, I do think that if Futterman was not in the movie, we might have a problem. Like, he is here to be like, just in case anybody thinks that there's anything weird going on about this movie's thoughts on other cultures. We have Futterman here to...
Sorry we started this in Chinatown for some reason. Was that weird? Did that weird anybody out?
Did Hoyt Axton have to say dragon breath and then a gong goes off?
And then a gong goes... Man, we're probably going to have to talk about that moment again in the future.
But with Futterman there, now we have this like thing to point to that says, no, this movie is saying what it wants to say, and Futterman is contributing to that in the opposite way. And you want to talk about a one-note character on purpose. He literally says foreigners to every single thing that happens.
I do have to say, also, the movie kind of redeemed itself because the shopkeeper comes back in the end, and he's like, when he comes back to take Gizmo away, he's not very, like, he has a different kind of demeanor and a different voice than he did in the beginning, and he just is very much, like, not playing that same sort of, like, borderline offensive character. He's just like, you blew it with the Gizmo, and I told you not to take this, and then you did anyway, and you're not ready for it. And he just comes across not as like in any way stereotypical, but instead it's just like another character.
Well, is walking through a painting? Can Asians walk through paintings? Is that stereotypical? Because that guy fucking motors through the painting in the last shot.
Yeah, I think that performance and that setup is intentional too, because it's very like, it's leaning on this idea of Asian mysticism, very heavily, right? Like, Dante's lighting everything in red. We're getting there's smoke for some reason everywhere.
Yeah.
Like it's designed to feel like Hoyt Axton is walking into a den of iniquity and antiquity at the same time. And instead,
that was pretty good.
And we have a short round reference too, because the kid is wearing a Yankees hat like like Short Round was. So there's a Spielberg drop. But it's all done, I think it's all done very self-aware, right? Like, everybody who is from another place is telling the white people to stop doing the stupid shit. That is literally all they're doing. And there's one white guy who's blaming them for everything, while everyone else is just trying to pick up the pieces.
Go ahead, sorry.
No, yeah, go ahead.
That's ultimately where, I did sit through this movie a little bit nervous that I was going to have to declare one of my all-time favorite movies as a kid as just not from the same place where my ideologues come from. And towards the end, it really becomes clear because you were talking, Nate, about your thesis of the movie, and I do think that the movie ultimately is trying to prove that it's all fucking internal. Like, you need other people to blame. And also, you're responsible for what the destruction is. Like, it was your fault in every way, whether it's because you accidentally poured water or you brought this thing out of its element into your thing with no responsibility. You caused it all. And you, like, this type of person like Futterman, and a little bit like the dad. I don't think the dad's like a huge Fox News watcher necessarily, but he's a dumbass boomer white guy. It's just like, no, I'm going to point every finger I can because I just get to clumsily, goofily go through my life. Whatever happens is foreign objects.
He is the ultimate fail upwards character in all of cinema, right? Because he's the father in a traditional like 80s era thing, so he's presumably the breadwinner.
He makes $0 a day and they live in a 2-story house.
All of his inventions are broken. He is traveling to a conference at Christmas to see legit inventions like actual robots where he's like, oh, hey, it turns out all my stuff's dumb.
I'm outclassed here. His wife is like constantly manufacturing the idea that he's not a failure. Like,
right,
let's not tell Dad what a failure he is when he comes home.
That is her job.
She's marging him so hard.
Yes.
All the time.
At least the nuclear power, the Springfield power plant, gives paychecks. Like, there's still money coming into the Simpson household.
He does sell that. He sells that
that mechanical hammer too. Did you see he has a mechanical hammer like the one Homer invents in the in that episode? The other thing, to your point about the internal destruction of the small town, because I think that is the big thing, right? I said the thesis is about its breakdown of small town America. It is because of things like the town coddles the rich, awful capitalist lady who owns everybody. She's walking around abusing the entire society, and everybody just won't say no to her.
Yeah.
You have this simmering racism among the older people who are unfulfilled. You have young people who see no future for themselves other than to barely make it by at a shitty job that is dead end.
And ultimately to leave for the big city. Like, they ultimately leave and they go to New York because there's no future in the small town.
You know that because of Gremlins 2.
I know that because of Gremlins 2, the new batch.
I do love this thing in this movie, and It's a Wonderful Life, and the original Roadhouse. I have not seen the remake, but every small town gets one multimillionaire. Like, there's one single rich person, and they control so much. In Roadhouse, he owns the town. Everybody pays him a fee, and when he wants, he gets into a monster truck and drives around town.
Oh, hell yeah, dude. Come on, admit it. If you owned a town, you're going to cruise around that town in a monster truck.
I'm a fucking moron because I live in Southern California. It's extremely expensive. It's so shitty to live here as far as money goes. Why don't I just go be the one rich person in a small town?
Yeah.
And fucking
important downside. The whole small town shoots him to death with zero consequences at the end of the Roadhouse.
But see, this is why that argument's always bullshit. Think about his life before he got shot. It was fucking dope as shit.
Yeah.
That's fair. Yeah.
We're
I guess he crossed one too many T. That's his problem.
Oh, that air horn means that it is speed round. Here we go. One word answers. Speed round is always like the slowest.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to deal with it. Are the Gremlins making all these props? Like, when did they suddenly have a little hat and scarf? Where are these things coming from, guys? Is there an Acme in this world that we just never see?
I think they magic them up. I think they go by cartoon rules. Watching it this most recent time, I was like, I guess they could be killing people and taking their clothes, but the clothes aren't covered in blood, and
they're gremlin sized. Even the saxophone.
Yeah. So where did he get that sax from? I think they are cartoons, and if like there are several times where you see Bugs Bunny in like the background, like as an object, like a toy or something, and I think that's what the rule is. They can reach off screen, or if they're off screen, they can like manifest anything they need for the bit.
How about this is the ultimate example, Nate? You brought up earlier that we get one moment of like Christmas pleasantness when we see carolers. The Gremlins also watch that because they're also watching this movie. So they go and carol, and they sing the theme song from Gremlins.
Yeah.
Where did they hear that song?
Well, it seems pretty clear, especially if we take in evidence from Gremlins 2, that Gremlins are aware of the movie as a text and their part in it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that is like doubled, tripled, quadrupled down in Gremlins 2, the new batch.
Yeah, like to bonkers degrees to where like you're not even sure what you're looking at. It's like that. It's very postmodern.
Yeah. There's a part where in Gremlins 2, and this is only in some cuts, where the Gremlins claw out of the movie that you're watching into Leonard Maltin's like room where he criticizes movies, and he's criticizing the original Gremlins, and they kill him.
Yeah, and I think also Hulk Hogan joins in on that for some reason,
brother.
which that's pretty hard to to wrap my mind around right now.
Yeah,
Leonard
for some reason I had remembered this original Gremlins having like a moment where the film breaks and then you see just the bulb and it melts and stuff, and then it has to reset, but that doesn't happen in this. But it so could.
And we do get a moment that we could have analyzed more if we so chose, which was where they're watching Snow White, and then they see silhouettes behind it, and then they, crawl through the movie screen just to like make sure that the meta-ness is known.
I do feel like he really means it when he said like there's things he wanted to do in Gremlins that he made sure he underlined in Gremlins 2. But it's like you did do those things in the original movie. They were just a little more subtle than where you took it in the second one.
Honestly, watching this week, I was probably the initial Gremlins 2 is better. Like that was,
but
I started that.
There's no chance.
But watching this week, like it does everything Gremlins 2 does and this is not a subtle movie, in a more subtle way.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Does this movie prove that curly-haired people aren't just super attractive but also get the job done? Are we talking about Billy Peltzer here?
And his mom.
I think the mom. Yeah, the mom definitely curly-haired and gets the job done. Billy doesn't do shit.
Billy was there.
Yeah.
You always
Billy manages to survive to the end until Deus Ex Machina saves the day.
You always need a white guy present so that somebody can absorb the credit for what has happened. Otherwise, it just floats off.
I swear to God, that fucking last 10 minutes where Stripe throws something at Billy and he ducks down and cowers for the rest of the movie, and you can feel him praying for Gizmo in a Barbie car.
Yeah.
To come solve all of his problems.
You cannot overstate the fact that this is a movie about subhuman intelligence creatures that outsmart our hero instantly. That like they immediately bamboozle and trick him, and that is like important to the action of the film.
I kind of wish we did this in Terminator back to back. Is Bathroom Buddy the worst name for a product of all time?
It's not a great picture.
It's terrible. It's a terrible name, especially for all of the things that shoot out of it.
I mean, these inventions are not just are they not selling because they're unnecessary. Like it's not that hard to crack eggs. Like I don't need help cracking eggs, but the way that it will shoot whatever, like shaving cream or toothpaste at you, and then he's like, "Oh, I added a razor." No, bro. Like this could have been a different horror movie of just his inventions killing you. Did Baby Yoda kind of just copy Gizmo's whole deal? And this is something Joe Dante is on the record complaining about.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like he's rambunctious. Like he basically Baby Yoda is a combination of the Mogwai form and the Gremlin form in one form.
There's this theory that you're not famous until people can see, like, tell who you are by your silhouette.
Yeah.
And if I saw a silhouette of Gizmo, I would not be sure who that was.
Yeah. And if you heard his little voice, right?
Yeah. And I mean,
it's a light issue.
We see now that the Mandalorian has decided to like cover stories of other Jedis and shit, or Mandalorians and shit. That Baby Yoda was the entire thing.
Yeah.
Like that was its entire popularity was having Gizmo. Like we love this little guy that we can have as a sidekick.
Also, clearly, everybody responded to the episodic nature of The Mandalorian at first, and they were like, "Oh, if you like one-off episodes, you know what you're really gonna like? Having to watch different shows across our network to get the coherent single story of what the fuck is going on."
Can you guys remember a time, and this has happened to me multiple times in my life, right? Like, I remember the lows of the 80s and then Little Mermaid coming out or Lion King coming out. But can you guys remember a time 5, 6, 7 years ago where it was like Disney owns everything and they are unconquerable?
Yeah, everything they own is good. Is like at the peak of its ability right now.
The anticipation of what good could come from all of it, and now it's just like, oh yeah, no, I'm too exhausted to even engage with this. So thank you. I'll see you later.
They bragged. Wish just came out. Wish is a movie that Disney made. I don't know if you guys knew that. Wish just came out on Disney Plus, and they bragged about the numbers, and they are like 1/5 of the numbers that Encanto had when that was released. Like, no one gives a shit.
The irony is that Wish is a Disney movie that you would have purchased from Wish.
Yes. That's pretty good. I'll give you a point for that one. One last question. Is this movie one sexy, sophisticated lady gremlin away from perfection?
Yes, obviously. Because the sequel, that's one thing the sequel most definitely gets right.
I mean, we got Phoebe Cates, but we're missing a little something in the gremlin department here, I feel like.
Do you know who the other female lead is from Gremlins 2?
I do not.
It's Haviland, who was the star of 16 Candles.
Wow.
I can't believe that Greta the Gremlin is not in the Pop Filter Hall of Fame.
Yeah,
like,
dude.
The amount of words that we've spilled on her.
Amount of times that she made a big impression. She was with us a short time, and she made a big. Also, if you watch Gremlins 2, the Lady Gremlin's hardly in that movie. She's in like 2 scenes because there's so many Gremlins that a lot of scenes are just like, here's 3 Gremlins. Okay, we're going.
Well, Tony Randall's talking Gremlin does take over the movie at a certain point.
Yes.
But there is a whole, for no reason, like Busby Berkeley-esque dance scene dedicated to her where they all fall down and they all create a picture of her, and then she comes out of the middle. That movie's fucking nuts.
Yeah, dude.
That is the end of our time, gentlemen. We have to go to awards. Gremlins did win 0 Oscars, I believe. So
let's check that.
It's crime.
Dave, check that. Run the test on
that. We're going to take the quickest of breaks, and when we come back, let's give it some fucking awards. Gentlemen, it is time to give 100% of the awards that we're going to give out tonight to Gremlins. If you have any awards for Ghostbusters, which consequently came out on the same day as Gremlins, you guys know that?
That's mind-bending.
That's a very important day.
Yes.
That means people were like, what are we going to see today, and then what are we going to see tomorrow?
Gremlins was somehow able to become the 4th biggest movie of that year, despite coming out on the same day as Ghostbusters, which is crazy. Let's start with Best 84 Style. Nate, what was the time in Gremlins where you're like, this is 84?
For clothing?
Yes. Or hairdo or fashion or whatever.
Style or fashion.
Great. Yeah. I mean, look, I tried to trot it out on the old Rushmore, but it's those sweaters. Everybody's just rocking these very comfortable, very practical sweaters, and they just look so cozy. And it's come back around. That sweater is now.
It's so funny because you know that like the whole town is all snowed in. But it's just the Universal lot, the same place they did Back to the Future, same Stars Hollow from Gilmore Girls. And they've got it all covered in like this fake snow, and people all jacketed up and sweatered up. And you just know it's 90 degrees, and they're like, Jesus Christ, we're so hot.
It's the summer in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
I did, just so you guys know, just so the audience knows, we were supposed to do the Rushmore of music tonight, but just to pull back the curtain, me, Greg, and Nate, along with some other people, we just spent last week recording hours and hours about 1984 music, so I thought that might get a little
more
annoying.
Music.
But now we're repeating fashion because now Nate has talked about sweaters twice in the show. Greg, what do you think?
For me, I'm going to go, and this is an off-kilter pick, but did you notice Phoebe Cates' bank teller look? It had the biggest, most dramatic shoulder I have seen, if anything, since the movie Poor Things came out. This is like a Poor Things outfit that she is just wearing to her job. It is such a dramatic, elegant shoulder. And then like probably a dress that's a little too mature for a young woman like Phoebe Cates is in this movie. But because it's so dramatic, I thought it kind of worked. So that was my pick for fashion.
Do you know how to prop up Billy Peltzer as like a love interest? Put his foil as Judge Reinhold.
Oh my god,
that's gonna make him look good.
Remember how the movie just absolutely forgot Judge Reinhold was in it?
There's so little Judge Reinhold, and he would be so interesting as a person who gets got by gremlins.
Oh, why didn't we see that? No, I read that they were major characters in the script, and they were just like, there's too many characters.
There's already so much going on in this movie. It's festooned. I couldn't imagine them being like, now we got to really get into like what
Dante
the dynamics.
was like, okay, we need Judge Reinhold to try to jerk off to Phoebe Cates, and then the gremlins start jerking off. And they're like, we got to cut it. We got to cut it.
That is awesome, though, too, that just 2 years before, they were in the most awkward scene of all time together, and now they have to act together.
Hey, now we're back together. How nice.
This is going to... I'm sorry, Greg. Phoebe Cates does have some 84 features, but that outfit is mostly 1884. So we're going to Nate for the sweaters.
I do have one more fashion, an honorable mention, I think. Mr. Hansen, the science teacher, has a pocket protector that is prominently displayed.
Okay, I want you to HM as well. The kid dressed as a tree.
Yes.
Man 84 was lousy with that.
He looked like a tree.
Next up is musical moment. Greg, was there a time where you were like, this is the movie right here?
Okay, so I think the score is a little over the top. I think the score does a lot of interesting things, and then I think halfway through the movie, the Gremlins dun 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 gets repeated too much. But there's kind of a slowed down, elegant one with a full orchestra when the mom is overlooking all the eggs that have hatched, and that the props look really good, and it's like 80s as fuck, like that whole scene, and then it cuts right into a Christmas Carol.
Do you hear what I hear?
Man, that is such a well done moment right there, and I feel like it also like captures a lot of the different themes in the movie sort of all together.
But like, don't just use like John Carpenter's Halloween score for your horror moment. Like, I love when they just do the exact opposite, and that makes it so much more scary.
Yes.
Nate, what do you got?
Yeah, that was my number one, but I also think Gizmo singing is
a
great musical moment.
Hell
Gizmo's at that little Casio keyboard, and we're going through the scale, and I wanted Gizmo to rock out.
Man, making Gizmo sing, I think was so important. I think if Gizmo doesn't sing, the movie doesn't sing itself. Right?
And like, that's just such a weird, like, I know he talks, and that's probably over the top, but his singing is like such a cool way to make him feel more exotic than any other animal that we have. And also, I would say Gizmo's greatest moment as far as performance goes, as someone who people have tried to teach me music and I just can't, Billy just won't hit the right note, and the way he rolls his eyes, it's like, no, it's this key right here, you idiot. That's going to go to Greg. It is the score into, mercifully ending into Do You Hear What I Hear? All right. Cringiest moment. We have talked a lot tonight. This is going to go to Nate about the purposeful and maybe less purposeful cringe moments of this movie. Nate, what made your spine shiver the most?
You know, it could be one of the sort of evidently racist or xenophobic moments, but I think the cringiest moment for me was Billy, a 22-year-old man, changing clothing in front of his 12-year-old male friend. And that being treated as if this is totally reasonable. Like, this kid comes into his room and just, like, sets up camp as if they spend a lot of time together.
Yeah.
And that's, like, a very 80s thing, but it's also, like, what?
What is wrong with Billy?
This is fishy. Yeah, like, what's going on?
They have that relationship that was dominant in the 80s and early 90s, the Kimmy Gibbler of it all, where you would just walk in, make yourself a sandwich, like, you would just treat, like, my wife pointed out immediately that Pete, is that his...
Yeah, I think so.
Pete jumps on Billy's bed with his shoes on. Like, how forward are you being?
Yeah.
But I read that Billy the whole time was supposed to be cast as a 12-year-old or Pete's age, and they decided to go this way, but left Pete the same, and so now we have this.
Because they thought it'd be weird if Phoebe Cates got with a child. I could see that. I could see that being weird.
Although it was my dream when I was a kid.
Yeah, I'm surprised they didn't do the thing where she was just like the attractive older woman that like he's drawn to, but they don't, but because he's just a young guy.
And my my childhood is
moved
riddled.
heaven and earth to get this terrible actor into this movie.
Yeah. Well, they could have easily just had her be the friend who bursts in and props her feet up.
Yeah.
And then they develop into a romance, Dawson's Creek style. But instead, they're like, we cast Corey Feldman. He's staying.
Or rewrite a couple of things where he has a 22-year-old friend. Like,
Yeah.
it's so easy. The original script.
That could have been Judge Reinhold that came over. And
The original script had a trio of Gremlins attackers, and it was Billy, Phoebe Cates, and Judge Reinhold.
Okay.
And Pete, I don't know what happened to Pete, but like, there's a lot of things that could have been easily rewritten here.
This is why Joe Dante looks at this movie and is like, I don't know why people like this. Like, there's so many things that don't really work, but that makes it feel very like approachable and I don't know, friendly.
Yeah, exactly. He sees this, and I get this. He watches it, and he's like, all he sees is the amateur stuff.
Yeah.
You know, the stuff that he grew out of. And I think now he's like directing episodes of like Hawaii 5-0 on CBS and stuff. Like his days as like a blockbuster director are over. But I can see all of that shining. But no, man, like you accidentally maybe made this thing that we can connect to. Greg, what do you got for a cringiest moment?
Man, that little gizmo guy is so cute, but every once in a while, suddenly my mind just flashes to Howie Mandel, and I don't know if this is a common thing, but like I don't think Howie Mandel stands accused of anything or did anything, but that guy gives me the ick. I just have never felt maybe it's because he's always doing children's voices and animated things or something like that.
Bobby's World, remember Bobby's World?
Yeah, I don't like it. I don't like thinking of him as being the point of origin of this cute little voice. And anytime I thought it, I would just suddenly be like, oh, I don't like that at all.
Nate, I have to say that I think I've known Greg at this point for more years than I have not known him. Like, it's more than half my life. And I just learned something new every week, and I did not know about this Howie Mandel thing. But
it's almost as bad as Scrappy Doo. It's seriously, it's almost as deep as my hatred of Scrappy Doo.
You just imagine him with a rubber glove over his nose, making the voice.
I don't hate Howie Mandel. He weirds me out, and he makes me feel uncomfortable, and I cringe when I think about him.
It's because he hates germs and you love germs.
I guess so. I'm a big germs guy.
Honestly, I like sometimes cringiest moment is like what is the cringiest for the people, and sometimes you can come out here and make the case that it was just cringy for you. I have to give Greg that one.
Personal cringe.
Sure.
I'm gonna leave directors for later, so let's do pound for pound performance. Usually we try to avoid the lead. This is probably the easiest movie in the history of time to avoid the lead. Greg, who is the big winner here?
Okay. There is another unconventional performance in this movie, but ultimately I think it works, and I think by the end of the movie, this is everybody's favorite character. The dad, played by Hoyt Axton. This guy is like bringing a different performance than everybody else. Very naturalistic. He really does seem like a checked out dad who just keeps entering into business dad mode anytime he wants to sell something. But he's the funniest part of the movie. He's the most realistic part of the movie. And I just found myself by the end of it really like looking forward to hearing more from him. When he sprays himself in the face with the kitchen companion, then he sprays himself in the face with the bathroom buddy later, and both times he's just like, it obviously wounds his dignity so much, but he just soldiers on.
He just
anyway.
says, "Nope, that's okay. That's okay. That'll happen.
That'll get right off. Just wipe that right off."
I've always, even as a kid, loved him in this movie because he does stand out. A couple of reasons why. He did not look at the script. He,
Is that true?
Yeah, he improvised every single line. It's so like he just thought it was like really forced to like say the words that were written on paper previously.
That's from Rebo Man. Henry Dean Stanton felt the same way. He didn't want to like say the script.
But I mean, like I'm not gonna be like, oh, Gremlins don't exist.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna change the movie. But like these words, no, I'll use different words that do the same thing.
Yes, and there are more Gremlins over there.
Good improv, Greg.
Right.
Also, he is a musician turned actor.
Yeah.
And I think you could tell that just by listening to him talk.
Yeah.
Like, this guy better be singing. And he is most famous for writing Joy to the World, a song that shares a name with a Christmas song, but it actually is not that Christmas song. It's about a bullfrog named Jeremiah.
Jeremiah was
Three
a
Dog
bullfrog. Wow.
Yeah, he's also doing Big Chungus Indiana Jones the whole movie, which
Yeah.
is really fun.
Dude, They cut to him at that convention, and there's just a robot there, and he's like, some of the stuff's pretty advanced. What the hell? And then the robot is saying the most outlandish stuff, like, sir, the components must be oiled. Like, are you sure this robot's okay?
And the robot's also wearing the same fedora that he is wearing.
In the 80s, there was definitely a push to make things shaped like robots that just sort of walked in a circle and then said three things on a loop. And people were like, okay, that's not what we mean when we say we want robots.
And, I mean, you see that when the mom, at the end of her big fight, she cuts open a stocking thinking a gremlin is in there. And she cuts open the stocking and a robot drops to the ground and just does the same thing over and over and over again. And then she was wrong. She faced the wrong way. She gets attacked by a gremlin in a Christmas tree, so it looks like Christmas is attacking her. Nate, what do we have for pound performance?
I think you got to give something to Dick Miller, who plays Mr. Futterman. Like that,
he does
that
it.
Character is the foil to Hoyt Axton in the movie. Like we have the affable white guy who gets away with everything, and the shitty white guy who can't get it right.
They liked that guy's performance so much that they put him in the sequel, even though it is so weird to have it be like, and your neighbor from back home, the racist guy that seems to have PTSD, is coming to visit you now.
And then for some reason there's canned applause, even though it's a movie.
See, that's because he and his wife don't have kids. And when you don't have kids, from an early age, let me tell you, you start scoping out the young people around you because you're like, well, someone's got to take care of me when I'm old. So it's going to be you, neighbors. It's your job.
Here, let me help you with your foreign vehicle.
Yeah.
maybe your bank job will lead to a safe retirement.
Well, now I work at building.
I do think that because we're doing pound for pound and not overall, I do think that the correct answer is the mom, who also played the mom in the grandma in Back to the Future.
Oh, wow.
She was Marty's mom's mom. But these two together are so interesting because one is on Facebook all day talking about Fox News. And the other one is like, you're charmed when he comes in. He's also fucking watching Fox News.
Yeah, dude.
Like, they're both
just
as bad, but one is just like can't control it in social situations.
Hoyt Axton is selling you gold in the commercials between the Fox News bits.
Colloidal silver.
Also,
you're going to turn a little blue.
This is what I call an Albert Pujols name, because if you're just used to that name, like you don't think anything's funny about it until you say it to somebody else. My wife asked who that actor was, and I was like, Hoyt Axton. And she was like, Hoyt? And I was like, oh, wait a second. That isn't a name at all. I'm going to give that one to Greg. I love the Big Daddy. All right, final one. This might be one of the most, like, even over Tarkovsky, most directed movies that we've ever done. Greg, what is the Joe Dante moment?
So much to pick from. But I went Dante, and I also tried to go iconic. And I think everything comes together when Gizmo drives the Barbie car. Because that is when we see that, like, we've watched Gizmo earlier watching a movie about racing. And so we see that Gizmo is taking the lessons of the movies and applying them to the movie that he is in. And at the same time, he's doing something magical, which is, like, he doesn't have the controller for that car. He is Stuart Littling that car. I am of the same size as you, vehicle. Like, I am proportionate to you, vehicle. So when I sit in you as a vehicle, I can drive you like a vehicle.
It's like Stripe walking up to a child's, like, kitchen and, like, literally cooking a steak.
Yeah.
Like, they don't do that, but you have this power.
And it is the full synthesis. Everything is coming together there. The consumerism of the Barbie car. The fact that he's coming in as the hero. The fact that that this is the only time that Gizmo uses the Looney Tunes rules, which say that if you can conceive of something, you can just do it. You can just use your ability to do it. It all comes together in this one thing. And also, when you think of this movie, you think of Gizmo driving along in that Barbie car.
I mean, the fact that, like, I think that Gizmo leans male. It's not Gizma, but, like, he's such a strong man that he'll get into a Barbie car.
I would say Gizmo's an iconic he-they.
Yeah.
You know, I think now, if the movie came out, the idea that we would, like, gender, especially the first one, any of them, they're all reptiles, and then they're, like, it's hard to tell what kind of man. They're all, you know, genderless, I think. They, them, I think, would be best. But they do say he in the movie.
just the fact that like I didn't even think about the Barbie car this much until now, but like just the fact that like everyone is using their pop culture knowledge ultimately to their destruction, right? Like they will just say they will prove that they've watched TV, even though we've never seen them watch TV, to the point where like we're pulling out guns out of nowhere and shooting each other. And Gizmo's the only one that's like, I saw a thing earlier.
Yeah,
I'm gonna use that. Which it does. That's the one like positive moment that harkens back to ET, because if you remember, ET does watch TV until he figures out how to get home. All right, Nate, what do you got?
I love that, but I was going to go with the sort of excess that's explored in all of the practical effects. Everything is gooey and wet and constantly cracking open and exploding, and it's just this chaos and melange of like, let's go as gross as possible because we want people to think this is a horror movie. One, he's trying to play a genre. So he's doing a facsimile of that genre. But it's also to say, like, all these things are really messy. Look at how messy this is. Look at how messy this movie is. Look at how messy Christmas is. Everything's a fucking mess. Here you go.
Kids want to see slime. At this time, kids, like, wanted to just see gooey slime, gack. They just wanted it.
Floam.
This is a rough one. I love Greg's pick, but like I do think that Nate had the Dante-iest thing, and I do think that like because we all watched this week, like I am now in this position where the next time I watch some sort of Ant-Man, Star Wars, Dwayne The Rock Johnson movie, I'm going to like it less because the effects in this movie were so just like capable, like like put me in there, and I loved being there. And at no point watching Gremlins did I ever think that it was a documentary or that I was a character. I knew that I was watching a movie and loved it. And so then just the next time, it'll go away because that's the era that we're in. But the next time I watch we filmed this in the volume, nothing was shot practically, bullshit thing, I'm going to be like, this sucks. I miss Gremlins.
We need the Jurassic Park style mix of the hyper realistic puppets. And then when it comes time to like show the things popping out of Gizmo, then we bring in CGI. But the CGI is focused and it's narrow, and we are mostly relying on practical effects.
I mean, like you watch, not to shit on this movie because everybody already has, but like you watch Brie Larson dress in her Captain Marvel outfit, which is like, that may not even be real.
Like that's not even something she's like,
and she steps onto a pier in a alien world, and like she's the literal only thing that exists. Like that that doesn't make it more realistic, it makes it less realistic. I want to I do love the Jurassic Park like combo, but like show me a CGI thing, and then when it gets close a real hand comes in, and like that's what it's all about.
Well, there's something that it piques creativity because Dante has the scene where Gizmo is pinned to the dartboard and the Gremlins are throwing darts. We just see shadows cast of the Gremlins and the darts come from off screen.
Yeah.
Whereas like a CGI related sort of director might think like, let's frame this so all the action is present. It's like, we don't need to see. We don't need to see all this. It gives you creative like mise en scène, I guess.
And barriers. Like I don't know if this is important, but we have no idea how many times Joe Dante was told no because it was either impossible or too expensive. And so he had to, on the fly, keep coming up with new ideas.
Yeah.
When it's CGI, whatever you put in the script is there. Do we sound like old men on a porch?
No, I think we just want there to be a combination. That there is something, everything in you cries out when you see a character standing in a completely CGI environment, and even their elements of their outfit are CGI'd. You you disconnect from it. You strongly disconnect from what you're seeing. The there-ness of one of these like puppets popping out of a cabinet, which is what I thought they did a great job. That's when they looked the best. Popping out of something where you just see them coming out, and then you don't have to see any other movement than that. Probably we do sound like old men, but I just think that there's a way to do a mix of things that will make it more exciting.
The first time we ever see a gremlin, if we're using the term gremlins as just the
green guys.
Just the green guys. The first time we see one is when Billy's mom goes into the kitchen and there's a guy facing away from her just eating a cookie. And it fucking hits, dude. It hits. And if that was CGI, like it just wouldn't have.
And it makes the Mogwai forms unbearably cute. Like, I mean, it's taken until Baby Yoda to get a CGI thing as cute as just, like, an actual stuffed animal with the roly eyes and everything.
But, like, I don't think that Werner Herzog was ripping off Joe Dante, but it was Werner Herzog who said, don't make them CGI. Just use the puppet that you're using.
Oh
for
yeah, because
practice.
he is a puppet. He's a real little guy there. Yeah,
he's rarely CGI in the show,
Yeah.
and that's a
He
rarity.
wanted to hold the baby too.
I would
Yeah.
like
famously.
to. I would like to see the baby.
Do you guys think that me and Werner Herzog could like go out and have a drink? Would
Of
that
course,
go well? Yeah.
of course, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it would ultimately end in the ceaseless decay of life. But
Yeah.
you could go.
Like
Eh.
all things, it is ultimately
Everything
pointless.
does, Nate. We forgot recommendation. I almost forgot recommendation. Whew. I'm going to give a bunch of points because I almost forgot. For whoever has the best recommendation, I'm going to go first. This gender or this genre bender of, like it has all these elements, but it's a different type of movie. It reminded me of a couple movies. One is Gremlins 2, The New Batch, and I don't know if that's like
Also, my recommendation. It sure
That feels
is,
very
Ryan.
out of left field.
that might not be enough of a sleeper. Here's a movie that everybody's heard of, but I don't know if everybody appreciates enough. The movie is called Tremors, and it has a young, middle-aged Kevin Bacon and a older Fred Ward in the middle of the desert. It's a very funny movie that also has giant worms. Everybody keeps talking about these worms from Dune 2. Where is Tremors' popcorn bucket with a tremor pointing right at your wiener wanting to suck it? I think Tremors is a legit good movie. Greg?
I heard an AMC executive was like, "We wouldn't even have made those buckets if we knew you were going to act like that about them."
Thanks for the scolding, AMC executive.
You don't, sir? Do you think people really are going to try to fuck the buckets? So is that what you're saying? It's just we're just having a good time, okay? They kind of look like beeholes.
This sounds like the kind of executive who is also like, hey, IT at AMC, can you go and delete every meme about that? Like, no, we cannot. I don't
Also, can you delete my search history? Thank you. What am I doing? I'm recommending?
Yes.
If you want to see... for a long time in my life, I thought Gremlins 2, The New Batch was better than Gremlins. And I still think it's a very fun movie and it's very interesting. But I think having more command and control didn't necessarily help Joe Dante out. I still think you should see Gremlins 2, The New Batch. It's an amazing title. The idea of it being centered all in a big building is very cool. And the movie has the prescience to see that a huge cultural figure looms on the horizon. There's a character that is just 100% a stand-in for Trump. And
I thought you were talking about Greta, but it's Trump.
Totally gets him. It totally understands Trump. And it seems to indicate that Trump has more in store for America.
But if you watch that movie and switch your vote to Trump for this next election, then don't watch the movie. Let's say that up front.
Well, as a I will be protest voting, of course.
It also that movie lives my dream. Like, why did Peter Parker have to wait for some random radioactive spider when he could have found a beaker with a picture of a spider on it and just drink that?
Yes.
Those are the beakers you want to find and drink the shit out.
Yes.
One of the gremlins just becomes electricity. The science is not clear on that one, but that's a real thing.
One of the less smart gremlins in that scene finds a beaker that has like lettuce on it and then just becomes vegetables. Like, that's not the beaker I would have picked.
I do think we didn't talk about it a ton, but I do think there is something about the Mogwais or the Gremlins that causes brain damage in people, and that to understand the way people act in the movies, you have to understand that, because when Mogwai is brought up to Phoebe Cates in the sequel, she's like, "Oh, that thing." And it's like, okay, that was your friend. And then he's like, would you grab Mogwai? Would you grab Gizmo and take Gizmo home? And she goes and grabs a completely different Mogwai.
That's racism.
So dramatically different. And it's like, girl, do you forget that your friend Gizmo, you hung out with this little guy.
You fixed his wounds at the end of the 1984 film. And I think the one that she picked, it's been a while, forgive me, but it's the one that has constant googly eyes.
The really,
the
really
the
loopy
super
one.
dopey one.
The really loony one. Like, it's like when someone says you look like someone and you're like, oh, really? That's deeply insulting. Like, I'm not sure how Gizmo comes back from this one.
I thought you were going to tell a story where somebody came up to you, Greg, and said, you look like the goofy-eyed buck-toothed Gizmo.
No, I used to be upset because people would say Seth Rogen all the time. But
What?
now people,
That's great.
Now people people really like Seth Rogen. They find him attractive. And so I'm like, okay, fine. That's what I look like.
I think they meant that you act like Seth Rogen, and they meant Ronald Reagan.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
that's too bad.
Nate, do you have a recommendation?
I do. If you love mischief and the opportunity to cause it,
I swear to God,
should
if this is
play-
Mutant Mayhem, I'm going to freak out.
No, you should play the Untitled Goose Game, which is a
Yes.
game that allows you to wreak havoc on a small town of people
Yes.
by doing Gremlin-y style things, controlling a goose very clumsily.
You'll have to go turn on some water so that the human will then go and turn it off, and then when they go through the gate, you quickly goose through the gate so that you can be on the other side.
I love I haven't played it, but I've seen so many videos and memes and shit, and I love how it's half I don't know, RPG, role playing of a goose, and then half you are Solid Snake. And
Yeah.
You have to,
Yeah.
You have to be such a sneaky goose to get the
But
achievements.
What's crazy is if there's a game about ghosts or I don't know, spiders, it doesn't affect me. I'm so fucking scared of geese. I will walk many feet out of the way of a fucking goose because I know they're pieces of shit.
Yeah,
assholes.
They're
dude.
mean. They're
Yeah.
mean birds.
And if you're aggressive or too weak, they can sense either one of those and they'll make a move for you. Avoidance is the way to go.
So they're like a stepfather.
They are like a stepfather.
Is this one of those games that there's no levels? It's just
No, you go to
eternity?
different levels, but that they're there's a lot to do on every level is its
Yeah.
own little open world.
It's like a bunch of checklists that you go through doing all
Yeah.
the tasks until you get to the end. But yeah, it's a blast, and yeah, you get to cause trouble.
Does it-
Everyone's causing trouble.
Does it end when your partner hits the button to release the canopy and then the ejection seat and you slam into the canopy and then die?
Actually, the way
does,
it ends is the last mission is you have to push an old man down some stairs, and it's really sad. His wife just weeps as the credits roll.
You know what's so weird is old man slowly falling downstairs, awful. Old woman quickly flying upstairs, hilarious.
Very funny.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
she
good
shot
shit.
out that window going really fast. That was a bad lady. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
no.
exactly.
I mean, and that's part of it too is that the Gremlins do sort of have targets. you know?
yeah.
All right, we have to take a break, and I have to figure out who won this shit. So we'll be back in 2 shakes of a lamb's tail. Gentlemen, I would say that this is the show that we are going to enter for not just Potty or Webby or Casty,
The Grammys.
yeah, the Grammys, all of those awards, but probably for Emmy consideration as well.
Yeah.
I mean, why not, right?
From our consideration.
And the US Awards.
Yeah.
We
the
should give this
Essies.
one, yeah?
Yeah.
true.
The Aussies.
An absolutely wonderful show. Do you think that we figured out Gremlins? Do you think that we have cracked it open like a cocoon full of slimy bitches?
Honestly, I feel like there's still more to be said about Gremlins. There's so many layers.
And that's,
Yeah, we could probably talk for another hour about it pretty easily, but I think we scratched that surface real nice.
Yeah,
right?
we got in there.
But I do think it's important to note, though. I think it's been a while since we did the 64 movie bracket into 1984, but we picked this because we, had fond feelings of Gizmo. I wasn't sure that we didn't pick this because we thought it would be this rich of a text. You know,
No,
we
yeah.
lucked the fuck out on this one, and
Although
thank you,
I
Joe
do-
Dante.
I do have to say, it is one that both, and if Mike were here, he'd say this, that both Mike and I had recently seen because it's one that we didn't lose the same amount of contact with that we did some other ones. We remembered it fondly as a movie worth checking out.
We have to get to who won the show, but before we do that, do you guys think that this movie is going to win, at least get nominated, or even win any movies? Are there any performances that are going to tackle 84 musical moments?
Biggest shithead, probably.
Biggest shithead with Your Honor, Judge Reinhold.
Stripe.
Stripe does suck.
Just always pointing guns at people.
Best duo, probably not. I don't know.
No.
Could this?
Because Billy would be at the center of
I know.
any of the duos.
Yeah, he would have to be part of a duo. Anything with visual effects could happen. I don't remember if you do that.
Musical moment.
Yeah, no.
It could be musical.
Maybe not.
Yeah.
I mean, do you hear what I hear?
Yeah.
Let's say that's the best candidate to get nominated is Do You Hear What I Hear for musical moment.
Do we think there's going to be 4 or 5 better? There, maybe that.
Let's just say it,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
That'll give it a positive feeling.
Joe Dante and Stripe and Gizmo are listening right now.
Yeah.
Shout out to them. So we do want to leave it on a positive note. Even if it doesn't win any movies, incredible experience for me, and I think for you too as well.
Yes.
Nate,
Absolutely.
you scored 31 points, which I think is a phenomenal number. Unfortunately, 32 is 1 point higher. and that is what Greg got.
Wow.
How are the scores always so close? Is there something with the host where they have to feel like they're balancing it out or something?
I just think that the competition brings the best out of people, and it's just the natural inclination is to make it close.
I mean, when most people talk about Greg, they're like, "Oh, that guy who's 1 point more than Nate." Like that's a common phrase.
Yeah. I mean, I hear that. My dad calls me all the time and says, "Oh, hey, how's Greg? Who had one more point than you?"
3% better, Greg. How's he doing?
But I will say, both of you, wonderful job. I will
Thank you.
pause here for you to
Hell
return the compliments.
Also very well hosted, Ryan.
What?
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, that's
It
good.
was Ryan, and an honor to be brought into the studio.
Yes. No, you've never flown all the way here, and boy, are your arms tired. Next week, we are going to talk about a movie that is 2 Gremlins long. And I'm not talking about 6 feet. I'm talking about 3 or 4 hours of Once Upon a Time in America, directed by Sergio Leone. The first Leone we've done, I believe.
Yeah.
He mostly made spaghetti westerns.
Yeah.
For Nate, for Greg, I am Ryan. For Stripe, for Gizmo, I am Ryan. And as always, please, 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 thank you for listening and keep watching those movies.
All right.